Derbyites, we're talking about comedy actresses today, and I've got Charles Bright, Marcus Dixon, and Daniel Montgomery to thrash it out, so to speak, about these funny ladies. Now let's just go through the nominees, and we'll just list them down. Lena Dunham from Girls, she submitted the episode Beach House. Edie Falco from Nurse Jackie submitted Super Greens. Julia Louis-Dreyfus from Veep submitted Crate. Melissa McCarthy from Mike and Molly, she submitted Mind Over Molly. Amy Poehler from Parks and Recreation, and she submitted Recall Vote. And Taylor Schilling from Orange is the New Black, she submitted The Chickening. So guys, earlier this week I sent you all an email and I said, okay, I think there's going to be an upset here because Melissa McCarthy knocks it out of the freaking park. I was so impressed with her episode. And so my rankings are as follows. Let me just get that in front of me. I think it's going to be Melissa McCarthy in first. Very, very close second, Julia Louis-Dreyfus. And in fact, I still think she could win. So my 1 and 2 are interchangeable. Then I have Lena Dunham. Then I have Taylor Schilling. Then Edie Falco. And unbelievably and surprisingly, I have Amy Poehler in sixth. So let's just go through what you guys think, and then we'll talk more at length. Daniel, what's your ranking for this category?
My ranking is similar at the top, but not necessarily at the bottom. I have Melissa McCarthy in first place. I have Julia Louis-Dreyfus second. How close that is difficult for me to judge. I have Amy Poehler in third place, actually. That episode was better than I expected, which we'll talk about later, I'm sure. I have Taylor Schilling in fourth. I have Lena Dunham in fifth, and I have Edie Falco in sixth.
Marcus?
So I actually still have Julia Louis-Dreyfus in first place, but I totally get what you guys are saying with Melissa McCarthy. This is one of those examples where the episode submission may change a lot of people's predictions. I actually have her at a close second place right now. Third place I have Amy Poehler. Fourth, Dunham. Fifth, Schilling. And sixth, Falco.
And Charles?
I just made a little switch in my predictions, nothing major. I have Melissa McCarthy also in first, followed by Julia Louis-Dreyfus, then Amy Poehler, then Taylor Schilling, and I just flipped my fifth and sixth. At number 5, I have Lena Dunham, and then Edie Falco at number 6.
Okay, so it looks like we are all on the same page about Melissa McCarthy, because this is my view, and then I'll throw it out to you guys. McCarthy's a force. You know, she's really comedy. She's comedy gold. Everything she does makes me laugh out loud. Mike and Molly, not necessarily the greatest show on TV, and hasn't been nominated anywhere else. However, she won before a couple of years ago, and that was for a very laugh out loud kind of pratfall-y type episode. And so I wasn't really necessarily expecting much from her again. I thought it would just be the same good old-fashioned Melissa McCarthy humor, but there's a scene at the beginning where she's in the psychiatrist's office, and I was really laughing constantly. I just thought it was brilliant comedy. And then towards the end, she has moments where I really felt for her. I wanted to give her that big old hug. So I really, really, really love this episode, and I think that she's taking home Emmy number 2. So I'll throw it out to you guys. Who would like to go first? Perhaps maybe Charlie. Do you want to tell us why did you think Melissa was so good in that episode?
She runs the gamut with her emotions in this episode, and she really just does a fantastic job, from just sort of, like you were saying, rambling at the beginning, you know, in a very funny way, to, you know, being very accusing and kind of paranoid about what the therapist she's seeing is writing down, and then coming to terms with the emotions that she has regarding the passing of her father at a very young age. It's just a wonderful little piece for her.
Marcus?
Yeah, the whole episode centers around her, which is always a really good thing in this category. She's also, you mentioned you laughed a lot, Rob. I didn't personally laugh at this, but she is a funny person. I mean, she's been nominated for Saturday Night Live 3 times in a row. And Mike and Molly, this is her 3rd nomination, so that's a ton of love from the Emmy voters over the past few years for this woman. And we can't forget, you know, her movie Tammy came out during voting or right around voting. I don't know if it was a big box office hit, but it has its fan base, and we can't forget Bridesmaids maybe helped her win for Mike and Molly 3 years ago, so maybe Tammy could help her win this year. But the reason I'm sticking with Julie Louis-Dreyfus is because her whole episode is so much more important. She becomes President of the United States. I mean, there's nothing more important than that. I mean, yes, Melissa McCarthy has the emotional moments, and yes, Julia Louis-Dreyfus is really unlikable in her episode. But I'm so torn on this. Daniel, what are your thoughts on this? I can't decide.
Well, this is, it might be dangerous to listen to me, because what I'm going to say about the reason I'm predicting Melissa McCarthy is exactly the same thing I had to say about Amy Poehler last year. I thought Amy Poehler would win last year, and it's because if there were a textbook, and actually Tom O'Neill has written a couple, so you might want to read one of them. If there was a textbook on how to construct, how to write, how to act an Emmy episode, Melissa McCarthy's fits it to a T. It literally goes from cheers to tears. She is funny and moving at the same time. She cries about the loss of her father in a way that it doesn't come off as saccharine or manipulative to me. It felt like a general progression from the humor of her discomfort in the therapist's office to the emotional gravitas of the loss of her father. And then she's talking about how she's drinking too much. And then she's giving this big confessional in a therapist's office. You could not construct a more Emmy perfect episode if you tried. And again, I said that last year about Amy Poehler. She had that great 2-part submission last year, which I still think she should have won for. It's just textbook perfect. So that's the only reason I have Julie Louis-Dreyfus a close second, is because, Amy Poehler knocked it out of the park last year, and they just love Julia Louis-Dreyfus in this role, and so I can't underestimate her.
Yeah, I think you're onto something there. That's why I'm worried that I'm overthinking the episode, because last year Julia didn't necessarily have the best episode, but they just really love Selena Meyer, and they think that she's so funny, and Julia, she's so good in this role, and that's why when I watched all the episodes, I said to myself, I think Julia's going to win anyway, but I'm going to put Melissa in first because I thought it was a better episode. So you're totally right. It's very difficult. And by the way, I'm one of the people who really thought Crate, the episode that Julia submitted, was perfect for her. I thought it was fantastic. I loved it. And, Tom O'Neill, he argues very correctly, I think, that she has some very great moments in that too, where she tells people that they're losers and then she tells them that they're winners after she knows she's becoming president. That scene in the bathroom always cuts me up. I've seen it 4 times now, and it always makes me laugh. Yeah, I know. I'm a bit weird. And I just think, she's great in that, and I wouldn't be surprised if she gets her name called again. Marcus, you've got her in first, but Charlie, did you have her in second?
Yes.
So, and do you agree that she could certainly win again?
Absolutely. I think another factor that factors into that is that Veep is more popular than it ever has been. Now that might be just because I live right outside DC, and that's all I can hear. But it does factor in that this show is very popular right now, and there is just so much goodwill towards it. 9 nominations, the most it's ever gotten, as well as directing and writing. It's really just increased its favorability with the Academy across the board. With regard, I do have to counter with one thing though. The scene in the bathroom. The reason you're laughing in that scene is not Julia Louis-Dreyfus. It's Tony Hale. Tony Hale's with him and the nosebleed, holding his head up, and also him maniacally laughing. That's the reason you're laughing at that. So
I disagree with a little bit with you. Sorry to interrupt. I'm laughing at both of them. I really am, because when Julia Louis-Dreyfus starts laughing, I'm laughing at her laughing. And when she reaches in the purse and she's like,
it pulls things out.
Why do you have this? Why do you have this? Like, I think it's both. It's 50-50 split, at least for me. But I know a lot of people find her so unlikable. Our buddy Ralph finds her really unlikable in this episode. He thinks that it could hurt her chances I actually found the email that Tom wrote regarding these two. Do you guys want me to kind of briefly say what Tom thinks about this?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, he says McCarthy's episode is great. He agrees. Talk about empathy. She's loaded with it. She bears her soul to her shrink. She cries a lot. She recalls her dad. The final scene on the playground with her husband is so bittersweet. But he says Julia's episode is dynamite too. It feels important. We're rooting for her. Finally, Selena, who is likable. How rare is that? Blah, 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 blah. He says, oh, here's a good one. Julia has the cool factor. Melissa used to have that. So,
yeah, that's another factor. Absolutely. Now, a lot of you guys
But honestly, what does Tom know about the Emmys?
Really, he doesn't know what he's talking.
Let's not forget the cool factor that Juliana Margulies had when she lost to Kira Sedgwick on her 5th try.
Good point.
Sort of over the closer at that point, except for the Emmys, and then we saw those episode submissions were like this, and it was really hard to predict against Juliana Margulies, and it ended up going Kira Sedgwick's way. So this could have a shade of that potentially.
This could be the John Cryer all over again. John Cryer won in 2012. We all kind of thought he has a good episode, but we thought they're not going to go that way this year, but they did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, I wrote that email to all you guys saying that exact same thing. That the shades of that race are all over again. Where you have what's considered cool and popular versus just going strictly by the episode submissions. It just shows the kind of game us pundits are playing when it comes to this.
Yeah. Let's talk about Amy Poehler because first of all, she's so popular, not only with fans, critics, but also I get the feeling in the industry. She's like one of the queens of comedy at the moment. I personally just think she can do no wrong. And she's never won the Emmy, never won it. She's nominated again for Parks and Rec. She probably could have and should have won last year. And so I have a lot of biases towards her, but I had to put them aside. I watched the episode, and I have her in 6th, and that was really hard for me, but it just didn't resonate for me. A lot of you guys have her higher, so I'd like to hear your arguments as to why you think her episode was good and could possibly maybe get her over the line. Daniel, perhaps you first.
Yeah, it wasn't a hard choice for me to put her top 3. I really think that top 3 was really easy for me. In fact, Amy Poehler was probably my number 2 choice personally in the category based on the episode submissions alone. She didn't win last year. Last year's submission was better, but we have to really put that aside because it's going to be a different panel voting on different submissions and with potentially different biases in mind. So you never really know if that's going to matter. They don't really like her for this role for some reason. She's never won. No panel has given it to her. But this is a good episode, better than I remembered. Recall vote, she goes through this process of excitement and nervousness, and then when her hopes are dashed, she gets to display that range, and she's really heartbroken, but in a very funny way. She's telling the kids in the Halloween party that their dreams are dead, and and it's just so funny. And then she becomes resilient again. It's such a nice, well-played emotional arc for her throughout the episode, and it really did resonate with me, especially compared to most of these other submissions. So yeah, I think it's a plausible win. It's not enough for me to say she's going to beat either Melissa McCarthy or Julia, but I can see any reasonable panel going for this.
Okay. Who else, Marcus?
I think either Julia or Melissa could win this. If there's a surprise on Emmy night, I think it could be Amy Poehler. She has, like Daniel said, she has the range in this episode. She has all the drunk scenes. It's almost like the writers of the show said, Jim Parsons wins every year for doing a drunk episode. Let's give Amy Poehler her drunk episode because we want her to win too. The only problem, personally, I have with this, I don't know if you guys did, I felt like she was acting the whole time. I felt like it was Amy Poehler pretending to be drunk, and that was a major issue. I couldn't get over the fact that, I wasn't watching a dynamite performance here. I was watching maybe like an SNL skit that went on too long. And I love Amy Poehler. I hate to say this about her, but I do have her in 3rd place because I feel like maybe that's an opinion that maybe a lot of people won't share, especially the voters. Look, voters see drunk scenes or drugged out scenes, and they usually give you Emmys for that.
Mm. Charlie, what do you think about Amy?
I also have her in third place, and just like Daniel said, I remember watching the season of Parks and Rec, wondering if every episode I was wondering, is this going to be the type of episode that she's going to submit to the Emmy voters? And I never really felt that about any of the episodes. When I saw that this was her episode submission, I was kind of indifferent. But watching it again, like Daniel said, it was much better than I remembered it. And the range she gets to show as her very determined personality, then everything's crushed when she's recalled. And then I think the wonderful scenes where she's drunk at the I guess what is a pawn shop that also kind of doubles as a tattoo parlor, which I just thought was great. I thought specifically just not just her, but also with what Adam Scott contributed. I thought as they always do, I really think they just play so well off of each other, and I just think that she gives a good range of a performance. It's just that it feels like the time has kind of passed, and it just isn't the right time, and it's a lesser episode submission, so it just doesn't feel right saying that she might win.
Let's talk about who we all think are probably going to be the also-rans in this category. First up, Lena Dunham. I have her in third because I know that the Girls is not as hot as it used to be. It only got a couple of nominations, and it's not a big deal anymore, maybe. But this is an episode that she has submitted that I think she's the most likable, and it was one because normally her character Hannah can be really insufferable, especially for people who don't really like that show, which is why she's never won before. But she's such a talented actor and writer and director, and this episode gives her more to do. It's funnier than usual. She's in a green, skimpy bikini the whole episode. I really liked it. I really liked her performance, and that's why I have her in third. You guys didn't necessarily relate to this or like this as much as I did, so I'm curious as to why you think she's probably so low down your list. I'm happy for any of you to jump in. Daniel, do you want to give it a go first?
Sure. I mean, I like Girls maybe more than a lot of us do, although the third season I didn't like as much as the second season. It's a fine episode. A lot of people loved this episode when it first came out, thought it was the highlight of the season. I didn't like it that much. I think Lena Dunham is likable in this compared to some of the other episodes of the season. I don't think she's that funny in it. She doesn't get a lot of laugh lines. She doesn't, I'm watching this performance and I'm almost like I'm waiting for the performance to kick in because she's in it throughout, but she doesn't herself have a lot of moments of really strong impact. Even the big fight scene during dinner, a lot of that material is really stolen by Zasha Mamet and Allison Williams and she's not really the centerpiece of that one. So it's a fine episode and she does a good job in it. There's nothing about it stands out to me.
What about you, Marcus?
I was just looking to make sure, but this episode actually is nominated at the Gold Derby TV Awards for Best Comedy Episode. So if anyone out there disagrees with us and they think this is a great episode, you could go there and vote for it. I personally think that Girls is a little overrated. I'm not the best person to talk to when it comes to Girls. I will say I was not too disappointed by her performance. There was a part where you kind of feel sorry for her when people are making fun of her, the guys on the street making fun of her bikini. She always has these fights in all of her submitted episodes, just like last year, the cocaine one. She always fights in her episodes, and it's just not something that Emmy voters are going to reward in a comedy episode because they're not funny fights. They're like really serious fights, like friendship battles. And in the Slugfest last year between Tom and Chris in the same category, they had a really interesting argument about whether in the comedy categories the voters are looking for funny performances or dramatic performances. Some people thought Laura Dern could win last year. But I take Chris's side on that. I think voters are going for comedy, comedy, comedy. Lena Dunham didn't make me laugh even once. I don't think I even smiled. I don't know about you guys.
Well,
Charlie, did you laugh at this performance?
I won't say I laughed. I liked it. And I thought there were moments that were kind of funny. But I remember her. I really did laugh at her performance last year, which I thought was just magnificent. But her performance, it just doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't. There's never anything that really feels like she is the lead, even though we know she's the lead of the show. There's nothing in this episode that really feels like she's taking command of the situation. And the big fight scene really feels more like an ensemble effort than a highlight for her, which is why I have her down in 5th place. Even though I think there could be legitimacy to her for people to rank her higher.
So look, these women towards the bottom of our lists are generally the more dramatic ones, and that brings me to Taylor Schilling. Yeah, and I think I know why the chickening was selected, because it's one of the relatively more light-hearted episodes, I suppose, of the series, and it just didn't really do it for me. And I think Taylor Schilling she's fantastic on Orange Is the New Black. She really is. She really brings that show together. She's such a great leading lady. It's just, compared to some of the more funnier episodes of these other actresses, I just don't necessarily think she has enough in this to really make her a standout frontrunner. But if the Emmy voters really do lap up the show, it's possible that she might actually win. But I've got her all the way down in 4th. What about you guys? Do you think Taylor Schilling has any hope? Is there anything necessarily quite positive about her episode? What about you, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, I came in expecting not much, because I vaguely remember the season, and I knew the chickening wasn't really a strong showcase for her, dramatic or comedic. But it's good. I mean, it's not great, but she has some strong moments in it, and we know the voters love this show. We know the acting branch loved this show, considering 5 nominations for its stars. And she does have 1 or 2 really good moments. I remember laughing surprisingly hard rewatching the scene where she's in the yard with Red, and Red is about to give up because everyone's looking for the chicken, and she sort of gives her this funny, taunting speech, like, "Are you just going to let them take your chicken?" And it's this speech where she says the word chicken about 8 or 9 times, and every time she says it, it gets funnier. And so I'm thinking, okay, I could see someone voting for this. I don't think it's likely, but I could see someone voting for that.
Marcus?
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because there was this. Was it your article, Daniel, about all the speeches on Gold Derby? That was such a great article. And
yeah.
That's our big theory at Gold Derby, that if you have a really passionate speech in your episode, you have a good chance of winning, and she does. She has the chicken speech. A lot of people in our forums think that maybe she should have submitted the pilot. It's been so long since I've seen the pilot. I don't remember if that was a better choice. But just talking about the chickening, that was a good selection for her. Although I did wonder why she didn't pick an episode that had flashbacks of her. That seems like maybe a missed opportunity, because you would see the range there, and we're kind of missing that in this episode, especially when there are many episodes in season 1 where you see flashbacks of her before she was a prisoner, and you see her in the prison, so you could compare and contrast, and that would be a good example of an acting showcase that she could have done. But yeah, that may be a missed opportunity there, but I think it was still a really good submission. I have her down in 5th place. Yeah.
Charlie, anything to add to that?
I really don't have anything to add to that. I think she's pretty all right in this episode, but yeah, I don't understand why what. Yeah, whatever. Like what you said, Marcus, I don't understand why she didn't submit something at least with flashbacks. That's what won. That's what made several of the people who were nominated for Lost very, very formidable contenders.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about Edie Falco before we wrap up. And, you know, she's always at a disadvantage because Nurse Jackie, say what you will, it's a comedy, it's a drama, whatever. If it is in the comedy category. She's won for the pilot. Obviously, a lot of that had to do with it being a hotter, newer show, and she is, of course, Emmy legend Edie Falco. But the fact that she still keeps getting nominated means that they still really do love this character, because otherwise she wouldn't be in the group. But she's not necessarily the funny part of that show. Her character is really dark. And, you know, this episode is the best episode for her of the season, I think. I really was happy that Showtime went with it. And she has a pretty good scene with Merritt Weaver where she calls a few ER doctors down to the emergency room because, you know, just so she could confront them. And that was pretty good. But generally, there are not that many laughs in this for her, as there usually aren't. It's just a really good acting performance, and that's really it, which is why I have her all the way down the bottom. I'm sure you guys all agree with me. Is there anything at all that Edie Falco can do? I don't think she's ever going to probably win again for this role. Daniel, what do you think?
I think she could win again if they move her to the drama. Like, if they moved her to the drama categories this year and she submitted one of those late episodes from the season, especially that season finale where everything explodes, you know, she could win there. I think she gave her best performance on the show this past season. But you're right. It's even when the show is funny, she's never the funny part of it. It's not, you know, it's not a funny character, and I don't think it really should be. I think it's better when it's played darker. You know, and even on an episode-by-episode basis, it's hard to find even an episode that gives her this huge dramatic showcase. This isn't the kind of show where she's going to get a Whitecaps, whether it's a dramatic submission or a comedic submission. It just doesn't work that way. So she's at a disadvantage under the episode submissions system from the get-go. And this episode I just thought was okay, but out of context, it doesn't really showcase her the way you'd get if you saw the whole season.
Marcus?
I noticed that Wikipedia on the Nurse Jackie episode guide list, that in the description of this episode, Super Greens, her name's not even in the description. The description is Grace is picked up for shoplifting. She spoils Kevin's secret. Zoe helps out the gay community, and Dr. Prentice cops some flack. Jackie's name is not in the description. That should have been a really good sign to Edie Falco. Maybe not submit this episode because she's not in it that much. I know, Rob, did you just say that this is her best submission of the year?
I think it was probably the lightest one for her, if we're looking at comedy. Yeah.
Yeah, it was very. I think this was a very forgettable episode. You guys are right. Toward the end of the season, there were some better options for Edie Falco and for Jackie, but I honestly feel like even if she had submitted the best thing that she had, she wouldn't really be a contender in this race. I'm happy she got nominated, though. I love Nurse Jackie. I love Edie Falco. I just want to say that for the record.
Just in case. Charlie?
I just also want to just reply to what you said, Rob. It does matter what you think because I've written, that was one of the first articles I wrote here for Gold Derby, and yes, it's a comedy, and I don't care what Tom says about that.
I agree.
It's
to whatever
a comedy.
It's a funny show. It's a funny show. I mean, it's dark, but it's funny. The thing was, I remember looking at the episode description on Wikipedia and noticing that, Marcus, and then I watched the episode, and the person who I was thinking was like the MVP of the episode wasn't Edie Falco. It was Merritt Weaver. She was the best thing in the episode. She was fantastic, and it's a shame that she wasn't nominated this year. But you know, it just seemed like more of what we would expect from considering the storylines. It just seemed like, you know, more of what, you know, just a natural progression. Nothing as in a huge game changer for Jackie.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, guys, I think there's a bit of a consensus here that Melissa McCarthy, surprisingly, is poised to maybe win a second Emmy. We'll see. Otherwise, Julia will probably take home another one for her iconic role now as Selena Meyer on Veep. we'll see what happens. You know, otherwise we'll see another Merritt Weaver-like surprise where any of them might just come up and decide to take that trophy away and give a 1-second speech. We'll see what happens on Emmy night. But everybody, you heard it here first. We think Melissa McCarthy is the spoiler. If you want to vote for who you think should win an Emmy in this category, go to the Dream Ballot on Gold Derby and give it your shot, and we'll see what happens on Emmy night. Thanks, guys. We'll talk soon.